Let's look at it from a political and international perspective. I mean, this territory, Mayotte, grabbing headlines earlier this year because of activists protesting against poverty, migration, gang crime, paralysing the islands. Of course, this cyclone is the latest big blow to one of France's poorest territories.
Absolutely. You're right. Mayotte, for all the wrong reasons, began this year in the headlines with those massive demonstrations. And it's ending the year, once again, for all the wrong reasons, with a massive, tragic weather event. Look, it might just be a blip in the Indian Ocean, right? Wedged in between Madagascar and the southeast coast of Africa, Mozambique. Unless you zoom on a Google map, you won't even see Mayotte. But it packs massive problems for the French central authorities here in Paris, 7,500 kilometers away. I want to show our viewers just a few of the reasons why Mayotte has been such a massive social issue, economic issue for Paris. It is the most densely populated of French departments. And let's not forget, it is an overseas French department. They call it the 101st department. 320,000 people packed on actually two islands. One's a larger one. Poverty rate, that is not a typo. 75%, three-quarters of people below the national poverty line. Unemployment, over 1/3 of Mayotte are actually unemployed. Now, those figures are bad enough, and they are heavily reliant on Mayotte on aid, on assistance from the central mainland authorities here in mainland France. Look at another chart here if we could bring it up. This is the poorest department. We heard in that report earlier, we say it, and it's now become, people just throw it out, the poorest department. Look how poor we're talking about. That top bar there is Paris area, the Île-de-France area, over 24,000 euros a year in average income. Look at Mayotte, 3,000, just over 3,000 euros a year. So when we say Mayotte is 7 times poorer than Île-de-France, the statistics speak for themselves there. And this is impacting in a million ways because obviously education, healthcare levels, a lot of people don't have access to education and healthcare. The poverty has also created a problem with public services. The authorities don't give enough. There was a massive drought problem earlier this year. There's lack of access to clean water. And you have just a lot of kids who are not in school, not being educated. That creates problems, obviously, for the workforce of the future. I'll note that the average age in Mayotte is 23, compared to 41 average on the French mainland.
Now, immigration, much of it from nearby Comoros Islands, has posed great challenges for those living in Mayotte. Many illegal immigrants living in a fear of being detained.
Absolutely. There's an absolutely eye-popping chart that I saw just a little bit before I came to the studio here. I knew that there had been a problem, but not to this extent. Mayotte, you see there, that yellow, that is non-French citizens living on the island. And that number below it, if you can't read it, is 48%. Nearly half of the Mayotte are not French citizens. And you say, well, how'd that happen? How'd that situation come about? Given the fact that that left-hand chart shows just a tiny sliver of yellow of non-French citizens in all the remaining French territories. The reason is relatively simple if you know your geography and history. It's that Mayotte is part of what's called the Comoros Island chain. And back in 1970s, mid-70s, some of the Comoros voted to break away, go their own way, become independent. But two of those islands, the ones we're talking about today in Mayotte, they basically voted to stay with France. That was a curse and a blessing in the end, Annette, because, they got to benefit from the French social security system, from the French health system, and getting that assistance I was talking about from mainland France. But they also became a magnet, and a big magnet, for those from the Comoros Islands who saw even poverty-stricken Mayotte that I was just describing as an El Dorado. So they have their boat people problem. People coming from the Comoros, people coming from the east coast of Africa, from the so-called Great Lakes region, people coming from Madagascar. It's a problem that's not going away, and it's also creating a lot of social tensions, including those demonstrations we were talking about earlier this year. A lot of the people whose homes were destroyed were living in corrugated metal shacks. They were illegal immigrants who were afraid to go for help or even try to seek out any medical assistance. Why? Because they were afraid that if they did so, they'd call attention to the authorities and they would run the risk of being deported.
Doug Herbert, thank you so much.